And greetings, welcome to Blood Sports. Today on the YouTubes, Jacon and Kris are here to argue for forced blood transfusions by the Coca-Cola cops, otherwise known as the private healthcare. Greeting them in the octagon is Ben and Sam. They're here to tell you all about the hybrid system they have envisioned of the future. No Coca-Cola cops. Join us. We're going to have a fascinating policy discussion. First up, Jacob, what is this private system you're so on about?
Hey, I'm Jacob, and so what I've operationally defined private healthcare as is, I would like to preface it with a quick little bit. Capitalism provides a well-rounded market on which healthcare providers choose. While this may put some citizens at a disadvantage, this model is meant to encourage work and productivity in society. One alternative form of privatized healthcare is charity. This social model of private healthcare has been proven time and again to be a reliable source of financial aid, but the social contract of recipients and participants expects the recipient to pay the pledges by contributing back to society in the form of labor. Therein, it is entirely up to the members of society to contribute monetary pledges at their own risk or by the private company's policy on defaulters of the generous system.
Very cool. All right, Kris, you want to pick that up?
Yeah, I agree with all that. As an introduction, the only thing I wanted to add here at the beginning is I think it's great that within our liberalist principles that we can still have a kind of a policy debate like this. It's not such a stringent ideology that dictates this very specific way. I like that we have this openness to discuss this.
Yeah, I always call it, you don't ask for conformity of thought, but a kinship of values.
Yes.
So,
remember, this is blood sports, homie.
Oh, it's blood sparks.
Yeah.
All right. Well, just remember, blood.
Vague niceties.
The other half of this debate here is Ben and Sam. So, Ben, what's this hybrid system?
So a hybrid system of healthcare is a system of healthcare in which everyone is required to pay into a healthcare plan that is controlled via private insurance companies. People who are otherwise unable to pay would be given subsidies to do so. That is the basic idea of at least how I envision a hybrid system of healthcare is.
Right. That's pretty cool. Sam.
Cool. So my idea of a hybrid system is public and private healthcare. And normally you'd think that, socialized anything takes away freedom from an individual. But I'll argue the contrary. I would argue that socialized water doesn't take away from, freedom. And it's a necessity. And I argue that it should not be a commodity. And so I argue for a very basic type of public healthcare where if you are sick, you go to the doctor, and it's not measured, like you don't get healthcare based off of how big your wallet is. And I'd just say I'm with the 62 to 77 people who would support a Medicare for all system in America.
Oh, very well then. Let's get going with the first question here. I think I'll go with Ben. Does a necessity, as Sam stated, necessarily mean a right?
I would argue that if your country is wealthy enough, that your country has a responsibility to help you. So yes, I would argue that healthcare is indeed a right.
Christopher, same question.
I would think that, and I think of this as get into positive or negative rights. If the country is wealthy enough to start offering things, where are we gonna draw that line at? What is it that pushes healthcare over that line versus other necessities, food, shelter? Yeah.
Jacob, where would you draw that line? Like, how far should a government go?
Well, government realistically should be as minimal as possible. The basic libertarian stance. Really, a government's position is to protect its people as well as to protect its I want to say borders, but that's, I mean, it's not
Well, you
the
can't have a
appropriate
nation
word.
without borders. Yep.
Yeah, of course. But I mean in the sense of its people and the rights of its people, even at the cost of the government's own fortitude, if I want to say that. So, going back to Sam's comment about public water, I would agree to that. I don't really see any opposition to it. There are some places in the states that you can actually collect rainwater and filter it into proper drinking water at no cost. But there are certain states or counties or systems within the states that say you cannot collect rainwater. It is not necessarily property of the government, but you don't have a right to water. So we can choose to put bans on it and make it a commodity ourselves.
Sam, do you have a response to that?
Yeah, I would say that, like, access to water is a right. Everybody needs to have access to water. Whether or not an individual has water in their home or stored away somewhere, that's up to them. And what I mean by that is everyone should have some sort of, basic healthcare, so that if you're born with a birth defect, you get some sort of subsidy, because, or if you've got some sort of pre-existing condition. We can't have private insurance companies try their utmost hardest to deny you that, because it's a for-profit system, and an insurance company by its very nature is trying to cut costs to compete with other insurance companies. So the people who really hurt in that instance are the consumers. Yeah, I have a bit of a problem labeling anything as a right. Well, anything other than the basic necessities as a right, because when times are tough, a right is a right. And if your economy collapses, and people, if you can't fork out for someone's healthcare, then we shouldn't put all of our GDP into making sure people are healthy. Like I'm not in favor for any sort of cosmetic surgery being publicly funded or anything like that. Just just a basic sort of thing. So, like, do you mind if I just read out something that I have here?
Oh, go ahead. Absolutely.
And yeah, sure. So in 2017, Bernie Sanders tweeted out, "People go to the doctor because they're sick, get a diagnosis from their doctor, but they can't afford the treatment. How crazy is that?" And Ben Shapiro retweeted him saying, "I go to a fancy store to check out a piece of furniture, can't afford it. That's totally crazy." And I would argue my problem with Ben Shapiro's analogy here of comparing healthcare to another commodity is that you can choose to have good furniture or you could choose to have bad furniture. That's optional. But if you don't have good healthcare, you're dead. And you're not good to anyone. And you're not good for the economy. Like if you get to the age of 20, 25, 30, and then, you've got a horrible condition and it could have been prevented. Because it could have been prevented by going to the doctor earlier. Because 40,000 people, according to a Harvard study, 40,000 people die a year because they don't have access to even basic healthcare.
Let's tackle that. Anyone, Jacob or Kris?
I actually want to respond to that. So, on the comment of Ben Shapiro saying that healthcare is like a fancy piece of furniture, he's wrong on that, because you can't compare furniture to a life. I mean, that's conflating the argument. But I would say that if we as humans believe that each other are inherently good, then we don't need the government to provide a bottom line healthcare system. And like I made the argument earlier, that's why we have charities such as like GoFundMe and Patreon and all these other things. And we've seen it help out so many people without those people even saying, "Please help." Like I know one of them is the humongous scandal that happened was Zarna Joshi, and Ethan and Ela, from H3H, they had raised. I want to say it was at least $100,000 for the dude, and he was actually having some tough times. No one knew about it until he had actually gotten the money, and so. I mean, but the only real argument I could see against that would be that, I mean, it's only if someone points out for you that something's going wrong, and that you can't really go against the social contract that you have with other people to not help your fellow man, essentially.
So,
Kris.
can I take this?
Yeah, go ahead.
So my question is, in a nation as wealthy as the United States, is it accessible for someone like Humongous to go out and beg for money? Because that's essentially what it is.
Oh,
I mean, is that accessible? Well, you know what I mean. I mean, like, rely on like crowdsourcing, you know.
He
You know what
didn't
I'm
do
talking
it.
about, right?
It was independent using not using. Ethan and Ela did it completely oblivious to what sort of situation he was in. They didn't even know until they had raised over a crazy amount of money for him.
Right.
But that's a different topic. Like his house burnt down, didn't it?
He was involved in some sort of he was either losing money on his house, his business was failing, or some sort of weather catastrophe had hit him, as well as his daughter is in rehabilitation for drug addiction. So, I mean, that's the only real thing that they knew until they started raising all this money and he got all this publicity. Sorry, and then it grew. It pretty much grew from there.
So,
Whether
I mean,
was...
a common criticism of socialized medicine is that, or Medicare for all, is that it's too expensive, and it would, you'd think that the state would, make a profit off it or something. And it is expensive. Over 10 years, it would cost $32 trillion. But if you didn't have Medicare for all, the cost of the private insurance companies would be $49 trillion over 10 years, which is a net saving of $17 trillion.
Ben, you had something you wanted to say?
Oh, I already made my point.
All right, fair enough.
What I was going to get at with the humongous example was whether he was asking for the money himself or others were raising it for him. That was at least all voluntarily done. You bring up the issue of begging for money. In the alternative, you're demanding that the state, which is essentially of all of us, all the taxpayers, foot that bill for you.
Yeah, I am.
Sorry, say it one more time. You got a little cut out on my end. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. In the humongous example, whether he was begging for it himself or others were raising that more money for him, it was still all voluntarily done.
Yes.
In the alternative, and what you're proposing with the state is you're not begging for money from other people. You're demanding that the entirety of society, that all the taxpayers foot the bill for whatever it is you need done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but here's the thing though, like, if you don't have health insurance, and say if you're in Jimmy Kimmel's position, because his for our viewers who don't know, Jimmy Kimmel's son was born with a congenital heart disorder or something like that.
Congenital heart
And Jimmy Kimmel realized that had he been poor, his child would, if he had been poor, and he hadn't had insurance, he would have had to, basically be a wage slave to pay off the tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt that it will cost. And can I also put out that America spends 16% of its GDP on healthcare, and other nations spend about half of that. And the reason why is because in other countries, the government is allowed to sort of negotiate with drug companies as to what the prices of medication would be. Whereas since the political system in America is so filled with money from the pharmaceutical industry, look at the Martin Shkreli incident. Like, you can basically just throw any price tag on any drug and make any sort of profit on it.
I do think he was fined for that for unlawful business practices, though. So, I mean, don't quote me on that, but I think that's what had happened to him.
Yeah, America still has.
In
Yeah.
in the U.S., I recently read a statistic that said 6 out of 10 bankruptcies in the U.S. are due to medical bills. So, I mean, is that acceptable to you? To be drowning in debt due to
Is that a question
medical bills?
for, who's that a question for?
The private side.
Right.
No, at least for me, arguing in favor of the private side is not arguing in favor of the current system. I would say our current system is a hybrid system. And this debate on whether it should be completely private or completely public or both isn't going to solve the issue of the medical system being far too expensive. You know, I think we have a lot of other issues with our medical system other than who's paying for it. The reason we need to address the reasons of why it's so expensive, and if we can solve that, then either system, you know, then we can get to the level of which system's going to best suits, you know, the population.
Well, Kris,
But
what
no, I'm
issues?
not arguing in favor of the status quo.
Kris, what issues do you see in today's hybrid system?
First off, there's a lot of regulation on insurance companies. They're prevented from competing with each other state to state. You're limited to, and I'm talking from, you know, in the United States anyway. You're limited to only insurance that's in your state. So the competition pool is much smaller. Because people use insurance not just for emergencies, but they use insurance from everything all the way down to a flu shot. The insurance companies don't have the time to go over all the bills to make, you know, good decisions on what to buy, what not to buy, like we do for any other product, you know, televisions, cars, clothing, etc. A lot of times they're just paying that bill, and doctors' offices and hospitals are going to charge, you know, whatever they can get away with, because that usually is going to the insurance companies instead of to you know, coming directly from the pocket of the patient. A classic example is LASIK eye surgery, because LASIK eye surgery was considered cosmetic instead of medical and wasn't covered by insurance companies. Not only has the technology increased and gotten better over the years, but the price of it's gone down drastically. So this is where we see, you know, market forces working as they should by creating a better product at a lower price, because it's not been touched by the insurance system.
And I actually would say, if you don't mind me piggybacking off you, Kris, I want to say from that perspective that that's also what makes the privatized healthcare such a good method, because it is essentially regulated by the free market, but at the same time, and at the same time, it's not bogged down by the government saying, "Oh, you can't charge this much," or your baseline has to be this much of what you can charge. You can't charge any lower than this, because that's what we're charging for the basic baseline healthcare that we are providing.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So, with private insurance companies, they're competing over whose CEO has the smallest paycheck. My question to you is, why are you happy with a middleman profiting off people getting sick?
Okay.
There's still labor to be done.
Yeah.
Yes, and you say that you let the free market decide. Well, the thing is, with some insurance companies, they will tend to skimp on some things and put more resources and into certain things. And so generally how that ends up is that they have horrendous customer support. And I'm going to give a little bit of an anecdote here. I know someone who had a minor mix-up in having his private insurance roll over to the next year. It was just a minor little thing. So he went on his private insurance company's website, tried to log in. He didn't know his password, so he had to go through his email, change his password, got onto the website, He gave the insurance company a call. He had to wait on the phone for half an hour, and he eventually had to give up because he had to go to work. You know, he's a busy dude. And at the end of that, he just thought, hang on, if I get sick now, my insurance company is going to wiggle out of paying me. And with you know, a universal system, like, that's the thing. What was it? You know, hundreds of thousands of medical bankruptcies. You go to Canada, they will laugh at you if you say that you can go bankrupt because of medical bills.
Okay. In response to that, I would also say that while I do intrinsically believe that the human population is a morally good set of individuals, there will be those who are, of course, the outliers and will abuse the system to their best ability, where all they have to do is just, oh, I'm sick, and they would get either some sort of medic. I mean, we have it now. People, oh, I'm sick. I need medication. I need Percocet, or I need Ritalin or Adderall or some sort of medication, and we just give it to them. And with the privatized healthcare system, well, I guess this would roll over into the insurance companies, because healthcare providers and insurance providers are different things. But in the case of the healthcare provider, they could say, oh, well, it's this much to get a test for this, so you better hope you're actually sick or you're going to pay out the ass for it. Which, I mean, there shouldn't be such of a high system. But then again, within the same argument, I would just also argue for, okay, then just go to a different healthcare provider.
Ben, you have any thoughts?
So a large reason why healthcare is so expensive in the U.S. is the underregulation of the pharmaceutical and hospital systems.
I would agree.
And a good example of this is that if I were to go to, say, the hospital for whatever reason, and I needed to get some gauze, I would have to pay something like $80 for it. Whereas if I were to go to like Walmart, I would only need to be paying $5 for a piece of gauze. So I think that's a major problem.
But I would say the reason for that, kind of like what I was getting to earlier, is not so much that, you know, the reason that hospitals are getting away with that is people aren't looking at itemized bills. You know, the entire bill comes in, gets sent to the insurance company, and then a final price gets sent to the patient in the end. In fact, I was just having a conversation. I went to visit my parents today, and my mom was telling me about a time my father has asthma issues. Went into the hospital, and when he got his bill, he thought it seemed a lot higher, because they're pretty responsible in keeping on track of those sorts of things. It seemed a lot higher than it should have been. And when he requested for an itemized list, they were charging him for a brand new asthma inhaler every time he came in they brought in a hit of, you know, his one asthma inhaler. So they charged him for like 50 of them instead of you know, just the one or two that he actually used. And it's only because they got on top of that and looked out for it, because the insurance system didn't pay attention to that. Whoever it was at the hospital thought they could get away with that, you know, just attempted to. And had they not looked into it, it would have been, you know, they would still been paying whatever portion was allotted to them after the insurance covered it.
Yeah. In addition to that, I do want to say that looking at your bill is incredibly important, because if you don't pay attention to it, I mean, companies will try to abuse the system. Intrinsically, I would think that most would try to not do that, because they would just lose out to other businesses and they'd lose their own customers. But yeah, go ahead, Sam.
Yeah, okay. So this is all incredibly foreign to me, having to actually put your time into looking into, like, what was it, your
Itemized receipt.
Yeah. I mean, that is so foreign to me from someone who comes from New Zealand. And I just want to point out that according to private insurance companies, and this is their numbers, on average, 80% of your premium money goes to actual medical care. 20% goes to overhead costs, such as the CEO's wallet and keeping the lights on. But with Medicare, 94% of your money goes to actual medical care, with 6% going to overhead costs. So again, like private insurance is a business, and with these businesses, you're going to have to hire, staffers for each insurance company, and that's just, all a bureaucratic mess, and it takes time out of an individual's life and takes away from someone's freedom. So, and I'll also point out that, New Zealand has the 4th best healthcare in the system in the world. I think France is the 1st, and America, the greatest company, pun intended, the greatest country on earth, is ranked number 37, and they are the only country in the developed world that doesn't have a sort of Medicare for all type system.
Okay,
we've spoken about private for quite a while. Maybe we should swing to the public option here. Sam, what problems do we have in public option as it exists?
Problems with the public system, perhaps, as an individual, you could look at somebody, a surgery that somebody else, you could disagree with how much somebody needs a surgery. And I don't really see how there could be any argument against a universal system except for my freedoms. Well,
then let's hear from the other
side. I don't know, man.
Yeah. Well, I have a question for you, Sam, which kind of ties into the direction we're going now. So as you've illustrated, and we've all illustrated some of the issues with the insurance system. In a hybrid system, are you talking about a public option of insurance, kind of like the Obamacare that we got in the U.S.?
Sorry, can you say that again, please?
Sorry. When you're advocating for a hybrid system, are you advocating for a public option insurance?
Public option insurance?
Instead of a private insurance company, like you talked about, the CEOs making all this money.
Yeah.
Are you then advocating for public insurance offered by the government?
Yes.
Like the Obamacare. So without market forces for insurance companies to want to keep costs down. So some of the issues like we've brought up with hospitals, doctors, offices overcharging for supplies and whatnot. What is going to keep the public insurance public option for insurance? What is their motivation to keep costs down? Does that make sense?
To keep costs down.
Because they're still gonna have to pay out to the hospitals and the doctors.
Ben, you want to take this one?
Yeah, because like I've said, I've given you the numbers. With Medicare, 94% of your money goes to actual medical care, whereas 80% with private insurance.
Hey, Dan, can I actually respond to this? Because I have a really good. I don't want to backtrack, and I don't want to be coy about this. But Sam, with that exact statement about how the government spends the government healthcare system spends 96% or 94%, sorry, on actual medical expenses, and 4% goes to it. You shot yourself in the foot because the government isn't a business. The government has chosen to take a foothold in the business practices. It already gets all of its money, or a majority of its money, from taxes and a whole bunch of other systems, such as proper little donation drives and, well, like I said, just taxes. So with the system that you've proposed, a millionaire, let's say, could just sit on the government budget and never get sick. and he would never have to worry about having to compete with someone else who's, I guess, would say in the working or upper middle class, who's struggled to keep their health in order. So how does that sound?
That sounds a little bizarre. Like I don't think that once you have good health insurance, you're just going to, you know, not give a fuck about your health because you can get some free medication. Like,
but in a way, that's what you can do with the government healthcare. Oh, I'm sick and need Adderall, and they just give it to you because you have this baseline system where you're taken care of no matter what.
Yeah, but you must have you need to have a need. You need to actually be sick to qualify to get Adderall.
Well, with the government, all of the majority, like you said, is spent on the medical system. So they don't need to worry about the actual medical expense, like how the average person has to worry about the itemized receipts. So, I mean, they can make a legitimate complaint. Someone from the working class could make a legitimate complaint. Oh, I have a headache or something, and the company could be like, oh no, well, you don't have the money to pay for it. But then they would just go to a regular smaller system already provided for them, where someone on the millionaire system, on the millionaire budget, would say that well, they would just sit on the government budget. There's no reason for them to move.
Well, I mean, my only response to that really is no one wants to be sick, and
yeah, of course.
Maybe this is an issue that we see in the United States.
Yeah, maybe I don't think it's...
Oh, it might be a cultural thing. You are right.
So people in the United States, as bad as the system is, love to go to the doctors, especially if they're on some kind of a public option.
Yeah, especially if
they're not going to end up having to pay for it. Any little thing that goes wrong, emergency rooms are packed with people with a slight cough.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, to me, like 40,000 people dying a year because they don't have access to basic healthcare is a bigger problem than some millionaire guy sitting on the wrong type of healthcare.
I'd agree, and I think that the issue there, I don't think is whether it's a public or private option, but rather because the medical system is too expensive.
Oh, I'm sorry. I know what my argument is. The millionaire has to compete alongside the working class. It puts him on the same level as the average working class than having to sit on the government budget, is what I'm saying.
No, I'm not advocating that you can't go to a doctor, a private doctor, and get whatever surgery you want if you can afford it. And like every nation rations care, and it's just a matter of how you prioritize it. Lots of first world countries, they ration care based on need, and the US does it based on the size of your wallet. Like just because you have more money, that doesn't mean you should go, you should be able to get a basic bitch surgery and push someone who needs medical attention out of the queue.
Let me give you a little bit of an analogy, because I feel like I'm kind of lost in the argument that you're making, but I kind of want to make an analogy for it. So, say you and a couple of friends are in the pool, and to get across the pool, you have to swim. But for everyone, there is a dolly on each side with a pole connecting the two. So you can hold on to the dolly pole, and it'll pull you across to the side. So with the privatized healthcare system, everyone has to swim at their own pace, regardless of if they're a millionaire or a working class, or even under the poverty line. So I guess not having to rely on the dolly pole encourages competition and kind of forces productivity out of people, whether they're sick or not, which I don't want that to be a negative thing. I want it.
Sorry.
I want productivity out of the American social class and socialites. Anybody, you should work. You should work to earn something, whether it be healthcare or a burger or food.
Yeah, but
So-
no, people are born with birth defects. Well,
Yeah,
why should
and I'm one
I
of
mean
them.
they didn't choose that birth defect? I mean, why
I'm
should
one
they
of them.
have to pay more for that? I mean,
I'm one of them.
I want everyone to pay into the system. I mean, this is kind of the Marxist ideology. You know, you take from everyone what they can get, what they can offer, and you give them what they need. And I apply that to healthcare because, you know, everyone needs healthcare, and if you want more healthcare, you can pay for it. You know, if you want to have any, like, if you want to have any sort of supplements, you know, you have to pay for that. But if you have medication, which by the way is twice the price in the United States as it is in Canada, you know,
Well,
then yeah.
You know, say the last part one more time. You know, I want to make sure I want to make sure that I argue against it correctly.
Due to pharmaceutical companies lobbying drug prices, pharmaceutical prices.
I'm sorry. Before that, yeah, I heard that part. The one before it.
Like everyone pays into a healthcare system.
The Marxist system.
Yeah.
Yes.
I would apply. Yeah, I mean, like, here's the thing: we do that same thing with water. I mean, no one's hoarding water. I mean, some people are, but it's not a problem.
Well, people aren't
Sam,
necessarily. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Sam, I'd like to push back on something real quick, though. I try to stay completely out of it, but I've heard the number 40,000 dying from a lack of insurance, you said?
Yes.
Yeah, there's a big problem with that number. It's a little incoherent because, one, there's no national data on that kind of number. Usually the people who are uninsured are more likely to be in poverty, and there's a better correlation between poverty and higher mortality. So I'd like to spin a question to Ben here. It's been stated that America healthcare is based on the size of your wallet. Do you feel that is true, Ben?
So I think to an extent, yes, because certain insurance companies have better coverage than others. I mean, obviously, I think most people are going to pay towards better coverage. I don't know too much about the subject, so I think that's the extent I'm going to comment on that issue.
All right. So yeah, none of us are experts here. So if we tell you to amputate your arm, please don't do that.
Please don't listen to us.
If
Unless you
do-
want to. But if you do, you need to go see a psychologist because that's a real thing. So I actually want to pose this to you again, Sam. So this is obviously not necessarily a counterculture, but it's a divide between the cultures that you and I have. Where in New Zealand you are much more of a social group of people, where here in America most of us are individuals, and you've heard the phrase "pull yourself up by the bootstraps." And I'll restate it earlier. Like I said earlier, Jimmy Kimmel's son shares not only my birthday, but the exact same birth defect that I have. But the thing is, I don't want anybody paying for my medication or my health care. I don't mind working for it, and I want to work for it because otherwise it would make me stagnate and lazy, and I don't want to be that kind of person. And I don't want to have to owe anyone else, whether it be forced from me out of my wallet to go into a social health care program.
I agree with that same sentiment. I've got the same issue. Well, not the same medical issue, but I was born with a immune deficiency problem, and I can get sick quite easily. But I don't believe that the happenstance of my birth should be someone else's responsibility.
Well, here's the thing. Say if you have a son and he needs open heart surgery, and you don't have insurance. It's and say the surgery is $80,000. You're going to have a fleeting.
Surgery's more than $200,000 for
$200,000. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're going to have a fleeting thought. Shit, I'm going to be a wage slave for the rest of my life. Paying back this giant debt. What if I sort of ignore my child's symptoms. So, you know, like that would be a horrible thought to have, and it would just be a fleeting thought. But it's something that I don't think any parent should have to think.
Well, here's the counter to that. There are certain insurance and healthcare programs that you can get with that will be specifically tailored to a certain disease or not necessarily malnourishment, but to a certain, like if you have a heart disease or you have kidney disease, you pay a certain amount a month into it, and whenever you need the surgery, they will pay a majority of it and be like, oh, well, whatever doctor you go to, we can pay this much of it. That's what's allowed over here.
Yeah, I mean, well, like there was a news story recently where this guy won the lottery. He won $1 million. And the first thing he did with that money was go see a doctor because he couldn't afford to see a doctor for a long time. Turns out he had like late stage cancer, and that could have been prevented if he had, you know, gone to a checkup. And it would, you know, for someone to not visit the doctor, and you know, they have a condition that was entirely preventable. You know, it has negative impacts on the economy.
I mean, I might be digging a little bit, but did he work? I don't want to sound negative, but
I think he did. I actually think.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, but don't you have it in the States now that like your employer has to pay for your healthcare?
Not necessarily. Certain businesses.
I think it's certain sizes.
Yeah.
I think after a certain amount of, you know, I think
working for a certain amount of time with a certain business,
yeah,
with a certain type of job, you get really good perks and really good health insurance as well as benefits and stuff.
Now, can I just ask? Can I just ask? So say if you're working and you want to either enter a new industry, or just say you're in between jobs for a couple of months.
Hey, don't get into my personal life.
Well, like I would imagine. I mean, I'm just assuming this. But with healthcare providers, you sign up for a year. Like you can't just sign up for a couple of months, right?
Yeah, of course. Well, there are some where you can do, it's very minimal, and you pay a lot more money for a short term.
So a lot of people, if they're just in between jobs, they're not going to do that. And they could become bankrupt in that time.
Well, actually, with that, if you're with a certain company and you have a job for a while, after you're let go or you're fired or say you leave the company, they cover you up to a certain amount and then it's gone. And then you have to get back on your feet and find a new job.
I guess that depends on which business you're at. I know with my job, the day I leave, my insurance is over.
Yeah, like I said, it's about the business that you're with, the work that you do, and for how long you are with the company.
Yeah, well, I mean, here's my question to you. Would you feel like it would be taking away from your individuality or your freedom to have free healthcare or basic healthcare? So, you know, if you get sick, you'll be fine.
I would say that it would take away from my freedom to spend the money on what I want, because the money that I have is going to someone who I don't know, potentially, and it's paying for something that I don't know about.
Well, here's my response to that. Like, if you get to choose whether you have healthcare, a lot of people will just, you know, they'll forsake their health. And so I think I told you the stat a while ago, but 100 million Americans have either type 2 diabetes or they're pre-diabetic. That's a third of Americans. Now, type 2 diabetes is completely preventable. But the thing is, so many people have this because they've either got such a poor diet or they don't get checkups, and it costs $60,000 for medication to look after someone with type 2 diabetes. That's $600,000 for their entire lifetime, and times that by 100 million. Like, there's so much cost here that could be prevented if people just had regular checkups.
Okay, the number one killer in the U.S. is the heart disease, which is any sort of heart disease. So I am I am the top 10 I'm number one for the cause of death. And to combat that, I would like to work as hard as I can in the limits of my own body and my own mental stability to provide for myself, eventually provide for a future family, and make my own money and make sure that the money that I pay to goes into my family.
Okay. Does anyone else want to? I feel like I've been talking way too much.
I also would like to say that I don't mean that in a mean sort of way, and that's why we have charities and like GoFundMe's and stuff. I mean, I've had one of my friends was in a motorcycle accident, and I donated some of my money or not a motorcycle, a 4-wheeler accident on New Year's. So I spent some of my money to help him out.
Yeah, but the thing is, like that GoFundMe's and charities are for people who are in dire need. Like, you could have a developing symptom that you just ignore.
Okay, so let's take that and move forward with it. So let's say that America develops a social health care program where we pay 40% of our taxes that go into the healthcare program, and a big ass, we get hit with a weather gun of some sorts from Russia or something, and there's tornadoes and there's earthquakes and there's tsunamis, and over half the American population is now under the poverty line due to that circumstance. What happens to that 40% of everyone's tax money that went into it? Where does that go? Because it goes into healthcare.
Well, I think,
but if
I think any system's going to be susceptible to corruption, though. I mean, that's a given.
I don't mean corruption. I mean what happens to it? Like, how do you allocate that much tax on a healthcare program into? Well, that would mean you would have to take out the 40. You'd have to take 30% out of that 40% and put it into relief funds.
If there are acts of God, if there are hurricanes, the federal government is going to step in anyway, and that's what a Federal Reserve is for, to help people in these times of need.
But that's a great example. We saw that private charities and donations, like the recent flooding in Texas, provided much more than what the federal was allocating and doing.
Yep.
Guys, we got a question from the chat here.
Okay.
Would the state paying for the consequences of developing diabetes increase or decrease the development of diabetes? Ooh. If we can first get an opinion from, let's say, Christopher.
I think that this is I know we're talking about hybrid, but this would be my main concern with the full socialized medical system. If people aren't paying for that themselves, if they're not being responsible for their own well-being, and someone else is going to fit that bill, they're going to be inherently less responsible.
Ben, you want to pick that up?
That's a hard question.
It's a great question.
It's really a question of how that money is being used.
That's from Poofy Kitty Pants too. We have the best experts in the chat room here.
Of course.
I love your name.
Only the best.
So how about it, Sam?
Okay, I've got a bit to say about that. First of all, I would try and develop a system where we limit the freedom of someone's diet, or we put limitations on the free market of food, because I truly don't think, based off of recent obesity statistics and basically health in general, people just aren't aware of how bad sugar and salt is for you. And for example, like I would hike up a sugar tax. I would ban corn syrup. I mean, there are a lot of other things you can do to combat diabetes rather than just forking out for people's health insurance.
Well, those are very much real.
Here's the thing. We have methamphetamine is illegal. I would say sugar is up there with methamphetamine.
Oh, we got some real controversy here. Kris, you got a response?
Yeah.
sports.
I ripped
It's
off my
interesting you
shirt
bring
just
that
now.
up. I was going to ask you, Sam, why is it you advocate for a hybrid system over a full socialized system? One of my biggest concerns with a fully socialized system would be that exact thing, that now that it is the responsibility of the entire tax-paying country to take care of people, that we would necessarily see limitations on what we can put in and what we can do with our own bodies, because now it's someone else's responsibility about what happens to it, versus
I
if
mean,
it's completely privatized and we're responsible for our own choices and our the repercussions of our own choices. Then we can be allowed the freedom to do what we want with our body.
I would like to interject and say that this is a very big cultural difference between
yes.
us being in stateside and you guys on the across the pond, essentially.
Mhm.
So, with that, when you say that you want to ban food,
No.
then-
Can I just fix this?
Yeah,
I wouldn't.
go
I wouldn't.
ahead.
Let's
I
let
mean,
Jay finish his point, and if you have to correct him.
there are some things I'd ban, but I'd probably double the price of sugar and put a lot of that into the government. Yes.
so kind of
Continue.
like how we do with cigarettes.
Yes.
Okay. Well, if you're not going to ban them, then I will retract and let you go through that, because if you're going to let the government, essentially, you're taking on the role of the government in that sense. So if you're having the government ban certain foods, then that's almost authoritarian.
Well, come on. You do have
Slippery
you
slope.
have banned food. Like, you're not allowed to sell cat or dog meat.
That's not food. Cat is not
come
food.
on.
I thought we were through. We went over this. Cat is not food.
No,
Dog is
hold
not
on a second. If
Is
you
there
can
actual
eat it,
law?
and if it has a nutritional value,
Uh-huh.
it's food. I
Yeah.
mean, there's no reason why why venison is considered food, and say, dog isn't, apart from cultural reasons. But
Yeah,
there we have the government
it's not
stepping in
banned.
and saying you can't eat dog.
No.
So we do have
I
limitations
don't.
on food.
Let
Is
me.
there a ban on cats and dogs as food
Dan,
in
do
the
you
U.S.?
mind, do you
Not that
mind
I know of.
checking that for us real
It's
quick?
just unappetizing.
Yeah, I mean, it's socially undesirable to be eating your pets, but I wouldn't say it's banned. I mean, we banned Kinder eggs for a very dumb reason. Only 3 children worldwide have died in relation to Kinder eggs.
Jay, you're
And
not
Kinder
thinking of the
eggs-
children. Oh, the children.
Yeah, I mean, like, you do have the FDA regulating food already.
Yeah, but
It's not like
because
it's bad. Like, come on, in my country, sugar is like $1 per half kilogram. It wouldn't hurt me if sugar was $2, for half a kilogram.
So then it's not going to have the effect you want. If it's not going to hurt people to prevent them from taking it, then
yeah, I mean,
all you're
look
doing
at
Yeah, but
cigarettes.
no, hold on.
Tax
We've got
revenue.
twice as much tax revenue coming in from sugar. You can put that money into helping people's health.
Well, now we're
Well-
just going, but then we're going around in circles. We're charging more for items that people are going to purchase anyway, so they're going to be poor, and then they're going to still be unhealthy. And then
Yeah,
that's going to go. Now we're just making the whole system more complicated, and
Collapsing.
then somebody in the government is still going to get rich off of that.
We have another comment from Poofty, just clarification on the cat and dog thing. It is illegal to sell dog or cat meat in the United States, but 44 states allow its personal consumption. Indian reservations are exempt from such restrictions.
okay.
As
Hey,
far as
isn't that group rights?
yeah, for
Probably.
native reservations. Actually,
Uh-huh.
that's a big part of the reason why their culture is dying. Jay, now the disagreement here was banning or taxing.
Yes.
Is there much of a difference between banning and excessive taxation? I mean, we do tax certain foods. I mean, we tax all foods, I think.
Yeah, all food is taxed.
Right. So
I
mean,
would say
Down to gum. Down to gum is taxed.
I would say excessive taxation is a de facto ban.
and why is that?
Well, if you say put a $200 tax rate on like a piece of candy, then well, most people are not going to buy that piece of candy. So that is a de facto ban.
Right. I'd
It's
like to
social
bring in
engineering one way or another.
I'd like to bring in a story, actually. I read. I hope that's okay.
Please.
Philadelphia they doubled their cost of soda because of people's health in Philadelphia. They ended up having to close down bottling plants because people stopped buying it. In fact, if I recall correctly, and don't quote me on this, it was actually cheaper to buy a 2-liter bottle than a 20-ounce bottle at one point, and people were buying more soda and consuming more. So with that in mind, Sam, how would you structure, and this is going to be a super exciting topic, how would you structure taxes on food so as not to cause bad behavior?
What do you mean cause bad behavior?
Well, essentially, when you have excessive taxation on something, you're going to have bad outcomes. So I guess it's better to say, how would you prevent bad outcomes through the taxation of food, which, like the Pepsi example shows, can happen?
That's a good question, and I'm not quite sure I have an answer to that, to be honest. I would try and make it so companies have to pay that cost, if that makes sense. So, if you oh, what am I saying here? Like, yeah, if like the reason a smaller bottle of Coca-Cola would be more expensive in that circumstance is because you're paying for the convenience of it, right? And so, like, if you're and this is why I say that with soda, it's not actually, you don't choose to buy soda, really. Like, if you're, if you get into the habit of going and buying a can of soda, and it's only $1 or so, $2.50, whatever, day after day, you're not making that choice. It's just becoming a preemptive trigger in your mind saying, I need this because this is my routine. And, I kind of don't agree with the idea that if sugar is twice the price, people are still going to buy it anyway. I think it's going to take a lot of time for the culture to shift, but people will be consuming less and less sugar, and eventually the culture will shift. And I suppose my question to the guys on the other side is, what would you be opposed to government funding healthy food? So cutting down the costs of vegetables.
Well, the government for the longest time
already had
the food pyramid was way off when it was first introduced, and they've had to restructure that. I wouldn't trust the government to tell me what's healthy. Even you've got major disagreements between health advocates on what is and what isn't healthy. But to your example or to your questioning of whether, I'll put it like this. Every person in the United States, at least, knows for a fact that cigarettes are bad for them. And they've tried higher and higher taxes, and all it ends up doing is, this is an increased tax on poor people. Cigarettes a pack around $5-6 here in my state.
What?
In New York City,
a
pack of cigarettes is about $12.
Okay, so
they still sell incredibly well.
How much is it on your side?
Sorry, I mean, like, this is a great analogy, because there's so much more you can do than raise taxes to, stop people from consuming the product. In New Zealand, we've got plain packaging, so all cigarette packages look the same. They've got horrific health warnings. They've got pictures of, like, fucked up brains, fucked up lungs. There's even a photo of, like, sort of like a cigarette shaped in a semicircle that says, cigarettes can make you, impotent, referring to your penis. And cigarettes are also sold behind a counter, so nobody can see the cigarettes until they buy them. I mean, there's all sorts. Yeah, and so I'm not sure what the exchange rate is from New Zealand currency to America, but a packet of cigarettes here is $27. And to put that in context, a loaf of bread is $3.
Now, I will ask this question. Sam, do you still buy cigarettes?
Yes. But I am stopping, and I have been inclined to stop. And I'm going to admit there has been an increase of, like, desperate people, like, who walk around the street and pick up cigarette butts. But like these are
That sounds
short-term problems. Like look at it in the context of 50, 60 years from the future. You know, if you can cut sugar consumption down by half, that's going to save a lot of money.
For who?
For the healthcare
Yeah.
system. Because
What
you're going to
about
have
the-
less going to
What about the
hospital.
sugar industry? You're
What about the
essentially
sugar
killing off,
industry?
you're essentially killing off half the sugar industry.
Good.
Because we do need sugar in some of our food.
You don't need sugar in some.
Wait a minute. I just
I
heard
need
good.
sugar in my cup of coffee.
Refined sugar isn't food.
No, but it makes my coffee taste a lot better.
Yeah, but you put it in other things to make food better. Like for cakes, you'd use refined sugar to make the best cake. Tres leches cake is extremely, it's a high commodity, and it requires some of the best ingredients. So if you kill off some of the industry that makes those good things, then you're essentially driving up the price of the tres leches cake because you've essentially killed off some of the industry that makes it good.
I'm not saying kill off the industry. Like I'm
No,
not
no,
saying
no,
that
I
it
mean,
should just go away.
of course,
But here's
of
the thing: if you're in a supermarket and you're thinking of making a cake later that night,
Yeah.
you know, and you're walking down the aisle, say if you have, you know, stevia, which is a natural sweetener, in the middle of the supermarket shelf, you know, and you have to make it so you actively have to look at the bottom of the shelf to find sugar. And if you make stevia, you know, slightly cheaper than sugar, you know, over time people are going to say, oh, well, I'll try that. You know, they'll be more open to trying it.
Yes, that also has to do with psychology, with some marketeers putting certain brands of food or beverage at certain eye level of the average height of a person to make it more appealing, because that's the first thing they see when they look at the shelf.
Another big problem is that with sugar, you know, it's like drugs. You need more and more of it to have a similar effect. You know, here's the thing. Like, if you stop drinking Coca-Cola for a few days and then have a Coca-Cola, it's going to taste way sweeter than it normally does. And so, yeah, I think the government should have a role in, you know, making very minor adjustments to how people look at food.
Okay,
So
I think we're back to a cultural.
As an aside, during World War II, the average health of a British citizen improved through the government-sponsored rationing system. So I think that should indicate that government-sponsored rationing systems are not always bad.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go further.
Yeah. Push a little more. Push a little more. I want more of that.
So that was just my point. I just wanted to state that.
Okay. I would also say that there are multiple facets as to why the health. Did you say it increased?
Increased, yes.
Increased. There are multiple facets as to why that is. It could be because the rations were different, or they were eating different food, or because of the war effort, they were exercising more, creating a better body type, requiring less food and more protein. I mean, there are multiple factors as to why that would be. Not just because of, the government rations.
So, I mean, like, you get to a point when your country is doing so phenomenally well that, I mean, you can talk about, should the state provide healthcare? I mean, it gets to the point where it would cost cheaper. It would be cheaper, and it would be more universal. And so, you know, you can talk about someone's right to better healthcare, and they'd still be able to have that. I mean, like, here's the thing. You know, you having to drink drink the same type of water as people who are unemployed, you know, why should you have, you know, why can't you, I mean, you can pay for bottled water, but like, you know, why should you have to pay for someone else's water?
Hang on, I want to take like a huge step back. And you said that the social healthcare system would be cheaper.
Yes.
No, because you're taking 40 or whatever percentage of taxes out of the paychecks that the people are getting against their will. Well, I mean, the moral thing to do would be to give to the needy. But
So where are you getting this 40%?
Well, in New Zealand, I'm sorry, Sam. What is the tax rate that goes to healthcare out of your paycheck, or do you know because you don't check the itemized receipts? Ah, so you don't even know how much goes to healthcare.
Yeah, I don't have to.
I don't mean that in a condescending way.
Yeah.
But you don't even know.
Yeah, but here's the thing: the fact that you have to,
I'm finished.
infringes on your freedom. I don't have to bother.
But I think you're infringing on my freedom to be unhealthy. I want the freedom to make the bad choices if I choose to, and at the same time, to level that, I don't want to push that responsibility onto anybody else.
Essentially, nihilistic.
I mean, you can, but you can be healthy if you want to, but you might just have to pay a little bit more. No one's taking away your, well, currently they are taking away your freedom to be a methamphetamine addict.
But if you're wanting to increase taxation on sodas or sugars, or use some kind of social engineering to push society one way or another, and your ultimate goal is to see how healthy the country is,
what if I have a What if I have a medical condition that requires me to eat certain amounts of unhealthy food to maintain a certain body level or a body type?
I mean, these changes that I'm proposing, they will have, minor effects on the consumer, but it will have huge outcomes, as far as the amount of money that's going to be coming based off of how much sugar, Americans consume.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree.
Even if, here's the thing: if sugar was 10% more expensive, how much revenue do you think that would bring in? Probably in the billions.
Where would that bring up revenue? And what part are you saying the revenue is coming from, and where is it going to?
If you taxed sugar 10% higher.
Okay, so then where does the tax of that sugar go to?
Government reserves. I don't know. It would go to the government.
What does the government need with sugar's money? Why wouldn't it go to the sugar company to expand in third world countries?
I'm not sure I understand.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So restate what you said. So you would tax sugar 10% higher, then you would see revenue increase by 10% somewhere else. My question is: am I correct in that assumption?
Well, I mean, no. What I mean by that is, like, if you taxed sugar 10% more, people, might be paying a little bit more for sugar because the soda companies can, or the sugar companies can dictate the amount. But that would put billions of dollars into the government.
Okay, what does the government need with that money out of that taxation?
You see, this is a cultural difference because here we trust our government. Like, here's the thing: that money could go towards paying for diabetes medication, or paying for a heart surgery or something like that. Like, I mean, I'm going to say over 10 years, Medicare would cost $32 trillion, and the private insurance companies would cost $49 trillion.
The only thing I'm willing to concede to your argument is the cultural shift that it would make people, after I would say approximately, it would take 150 years in America, at least in America, for that taxation to cause a change in the consumption of sugar or whatever you had chosen to tax.
I think if you started off small, and like you're saying, the 10%, then again we're making the whole system more complicated. So now poor people are going to be paying more money because they're not going to change their habits necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
That increased tax revenue is going to, let's say we put it into the medical system. The medical system is going to go in to pay for the healthcare that these people are going to need for still making bad choices and consuming too much sugar. And
they're wasting their money.
Right. And they're poor off, and they're going to need the help because they're still impoverished.
Mm-hmm.
I agree that an authoritarian system can create the state that you want, but it's at the cost of the liberty of the people in the system.
And
short term.
other people.
Short term, though.
Well, I would also say that some people who have certain bodily disadvantages, like some people have to consume a certain amount of food or a certain type of food. So you would be putting them at a major disadvantage because you may have made the healthcare for them easier to get, but the food that they require is now taxed at an immeasurably high rate.
Okay, let me shift gear a second here, because we can talk about sugar, but soda companies now are starting to use, or they are using corn syrup, glucose, to replace sugar because it's slightly cheaper, so that these soda companies can hurt everybody's health, and earn a few more dollars. Would you be opposed to banning corn syrup?
I wouldn't be opposed to it
because it is a cheaper substitute. It's a cheaper substitute to sugar.
But we have social consequences for that. The market will decide. Because if you don't want to buy something, then you don't buy it, and you can inform and educate the public all you want, but they're still going to make their own decisions.
So to expand on this, should the government be sponsoring health programs such as like healthy eating or whatnot?
We already have some of that, don't we?
The real question is to what degree?
What degree of what?
To what degree should the government be subsidizing healthy food programs?
Because
I don't agree with you that. I don't agree with you that people choose to be unhealthy. They get caught into addiction, basically.
There are some people who choose to spite the system. They're always
the feminists are telling them they can be proud of their body size regardless.
Oh yeah, there you go. Fighting the regressive left, one cake at a time.
Okay. Let me just ask you this. I don't know what percentage of Americans are obese, but what if it starts getting up to 80, 90%? At what percentage would you step in and say, hang on, something needs to be done?
But the market's doing
if it's a legitimate...
Yeah, people are choosing to be unhealthy, but at a certain point, you're not happy with the choice you've made, and you decide if you're wanting to be responsible yourself,
you can fix it.
Any person as an individual who wants to better themselves, there are plenty of resources, online, at health food stores.
It goes back to the charity thing. If you want to better yourself, like, hey, I need to get a treadmill because I want to fix my attitude. People will donate you a treadmill. They'll buy you a new one.
Yeah, I mean, again, but for charities, you have to adopt a victim status to benefit from a charity. Yeah, you need to say, can someone please pay for this? Whereas, if it's a universal thing, everybody
are true victims of their own choices.
We have a question from the chat, if you don't mind.
Real quick, I really want to say this. You do not have to specifically adopt a victim narrative to get charity. Like I said earlier, the humongous issue. He didn't say anything, and H3H3 just gave him money.
Because he's famous. If he was just a dude, he wouldn't have had H3H3's attention. Anyway.
I would concede to that, but at the same time, I still don't believe that you have to adopt the victim narrative, the victim status narrative, to get charity. Because you can choose to be like, I don't want the money, and you can give it back to people, and then work your way out of a situation. It can be done. It'll be hard as shit. But
you have to have some victim narrative. You have to adopt some narrative. Say, for example, you're homeless. You can choose to sit under a bridge all day, and no one will come along and give you charity. But if you sit in the middle of a city and embarrass yourself and sit there with a sign and a hat, some people will give you money, and because they will feel sorry for you in some respects.
But I don't think that's.
Why are we automatically assuming that?
I see what you're saying, but I don't. But I'm on the stance that you do not have to adopt the victim narrative status. You can, and people will see you as a victim, but you yourself do not have to see yourself as the victim in that stance.
And so we have a question here from Hardcore.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, Ben.
Nice comment here.
Oh, I love this guy.
Who's it from?
This guy is Hardcore. Carlos, how you doing? If you say something is bad enough that you can be fined, or I'll paraphrase here, or jailed for using it in public, then why is it acceptable to keep that thing legal for the sole purpose of taxing it? I guess the question is, I guess it would go to Ben or Sam here. If it's bad for them, why keep it around just to tax it? Why not just get rid of it?
Well, for freedom, because people
I
should
would
still
say it
have the
would be-
freedom to buy it if they want to.
I would say it's illiberal to do so.
Yeah. I mean, like, we are all liberalists here. Like, I'm not in favor of like banning anything, but if you were paying twice as much for sugar, I wouldn't see that as really, I get it, so that if you give that power to the government, it's a slippery slope, and they can keep hiking the prices up and up. But just a small shift would have huge outcomes.
Right, but the thing is, with that question, it's basically, I mean, people argue from a moral standpoint. Does anyone who wants to make money off a bad thing really have a moral high ground?
Ooh. You mind if I jump in real quick, Sam? I have a little bit to. I don't want to bully you or anything, but there's also the no taxation without representation. If we choose, we didn't say, oh, we don't want to be taxed for this. There's no reason for it to be taxed. Why don't you just ban it? Like Carlos said, why don't you just ban it? But you said, oh, it's for freedom. Well, you're violating my freedom by taxing something that is bad for me. I'm still getting it, but you're just going to ban it. Why don't you just ban it?
Well, I mean, like, it is. Well, that's it's kind of like that taxes is theft thing. Like, yes, taxes.
I don't believe
is
that
theft,
entirely, but
you have to have some sort of social contract, right?
Sure.
I mean,
operationally define that for me. What do you mean the social contract of what is the purpose? I kind of want to get this out there. What is your definition of tax, and what is its purpose?
Well, tax, you pay tax so that you can enjoy what society around you can offer you. Like, if you don't want to have any sort of social contract, if you want an entire free market, you can move to Uganda and enjoy all the, freedom you want there. But and eventually after time, you're going to want to come back and enjoy paying taxes and enjoying the social contract.
Here's the issue that I have with putting this into the hands of the government to solve our health issue. I've brought up here, let's see. One of the scientists paid by the sugar industry in 1977 was Mark Hegsted, who went on to be the head of nutrition of the United States Department of Agriculture, and helped draft and was the former to help draft the federal government's dietary guidelines. That's one of the reasons we have such a big issue with sugar is, these scientists and research agencies were paid off by the sugar industry, and then some of those people went on to work with the government to create these guidelines for health. If we put this just squarely into the hands of the free market instead of something with the government where they have the power to shift things around, like taxes or bans, to try to create a perfect society, then we can have real results, real research, and real people having the freedom to make the choices for themselves. I just don't trust the government to do this for us. Maybe in a perfect society with a philosopher king who can properly and correctly dictate everything, we can have this sort of magical utopia where everyone's fine and healthy and everything runs smoothly. But
how much do you trust corporations, though?
I was just about to ask that.
I mean, like, going back to that question, like, why not just ban it? Well, when you ban things, it starts a black market, and like with marijuana, I would say because there's a black market, legalize it so that we can tax it.
Well, there's also the prohibition area too.
Yeah.
The prohibition era. Sorry, not area.
Ben had a really good question.
It was more profitable for the government to ban sugar than they would have, but it seems like it was more profitable for them to encourage people to be using sugar, and now we have this problem.
But yeah, Ben, what were you going to say?
It said
How
basically,
much
why
do you trust corporations?
Right.
Okay, yeah, you're right. I don't trust corporations, and the reason that I don't have to worry about corporations is because that there is such thing as social consequences. I mean, if we find out that they're doing some shady shit, we socially shut them down. We stop buying from them. I mean, like I said, the free market will take care of it. If we don't want it anymore, it will disappear.
Right. I trust businesses a little bit more than governments, only because governments have the power to shift these sorts of things.
Yeah, but hey, look,
like Jay said, but the free market can put a business out of business.
the free market ended up with the Tide Pod challenge.
That wasn't the free
How
market.
so?
That was culture.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
what do you? No, hang on. I want to
Darwinism.
know what you mean by that. I want to know what you mean by that, Ben.
Well, I mean, well, it was a kind of a joke because someone made that
Yeah,
comment.
we all
in the
know what
thing.
a Tide Pod challenge is, but
Yeah, but like,
what do you mean the?
right? So say
free
if people just kept consuming Tide Pods, would you say it would be irresponsible for your government or something like that to come in and say, don't do this? Like, if say if it was good for the company that good for the Tide Pod company, because they're seeing an increase in sales because people want to do the Tide Pod challenge. It would not be in their interest. It would be because of PR, but strictly because of strictly due to the amount of money they're making, they're not going to the business. This purpose of business is to make money.
Well, here's
so
the
they're going
thing.
to like it.
They're
They're going to like it at the end.
Here's the thing. Tide isn't telling people to eat the pods. On the bags and on all the pod carrying stuff, it says don't eat it.
Yeah,
It
due
says
to
it
regulation.
right on the pod.
It's always said that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's
due to
something you
government
can add in.
regulation.
But to use the silly example,
No, not current regulation. It's always been like
Hey,
that.
let Christopher
Right.
finish.
Sorry.
I was going to say, to use the silly example, because of the fallibility of our government, someone from Tide could have paid someone off at the government to say, yeah, it's great for you to eat Tide Pods. It's going to clean out your insides. You should do that, once a month. Of course, this is silly because this is, an extreme example, but this is exactly what's happened with the sugar industry. It was a minimal enough damage to people that the repercussions weren't immediately known that something like that could happen.
Well, first, I'd like to say thanks to our sponsor, Tide. It's what's for dinner. No, I've heard a lot of free market. It's I mean, do you see any place for government regulation? This is to Jay or Christopher. Do you see any limits that the government may be able to place in terms of healthcare? I mean, what do you see? Because I'm trying to assume you're not asking for complete and utter government gone.
Well, that's what the hybrids. That's what the hybrids are for. I mean, the only argument that I would actually concede to the hybrids would be the government's only purpose is to put a cap on how much they can charge. A little bit, not too much.
I would disagree with that as well. I would think that the role of the government in mediating this sort of thing between consumers and businesses is kind of from a negative rights perspective. That if a company is directly misleading, if a company is harming consumers with their products, if a doctor is falsifying results or their credentials, then the government, the purpose of the government and the court system is to seek payment for those sorts of damages. So I would go that far.
So can I just point out here, there's been a bit of a problem with unregulated dog food. There's been a giant recall alert for JM Smucker Corporation, Gravy Train, Kibble and Bits, Skippy, and Old Roy, because they all contained products that all contained chemicals that were used in the euthanasia of dogs. So it's like, okay, yes, if left to the free market, a company could be, you know, it could be responsible. You know, they should answer to the public. But like, how many people have to die before, you know, the PR against them becomes so bad?
I have to ask the question: was the dog food the cause of death for any of the animals, or is it just that they found out that some of these chemicals are used in euthanasia?
I have no idea. I mean, I think some dogs did die, and because it was a problem with regulation, they didn't have enough regulation.
Then yeah, I will concede to that. But if it was like, oh, if nothing happened anywhere, and they just found out that there was euthanasia chemicals or chemicals commonly found in euthanasia medicines for animals, and they banned it, then I would have to go against that, because nothing's come of those chemicals or of that dog food. But again, yeah, if the dog food has caused the death of animals, then yes, it should be banned, or at least properly regulated. But then again, that just turns that goes back to my argument. The social consequences. You've killed my dog. You have to pay and fix this, or at least regulate yourself to where you don't have these chemicals anymore. You don't need the government for that.
Yeah. Why was this done in the first place? Was that within the bounds of some previous regulation that they could use these chemicals? Like, how did it end up like this?
I have no idea. I just saw a screenshot of a news alert. I can.
That's fine.
I mean, I don't really have any facts on that, but
yeah.
Let's swing back to
if I were to have a dog
yeah.
company, I wouldn't put those chemicals in the product I was selling to consumers.
Well, here's the thing, though. If the competition was so tight and everyone else was sort of, you know, getting close to this point, you know, if it came down to your livelihood, you or someone else would.
I think it'd be great PR if I could point out that my competition was using these chemicals and mine was free and clear of anything like that.
Oh yeah,
I wouldn't even need the government.
Dogs, but if it was something incredibly mundane, like, you know, some chemical in, you know, plastic bags, for example, you know, you could go and say to the public, every other company that produces plastic bags use these horrendous chemicals. You should pay a little bit more and buy mine because I don't use these chemicals. No one's going to do that.
I've got a good analogy for you. I want to say it was a late night comedian, but don't quote me. And they were going around and doing that thing where it's like, oh, let's interview these people on the street and see how much they know. And they would ask them, hey, do you think doctors should stop putting O2 in the masks for surgery? And O2 is oxygen, which they're just feeding you oxygen. It's completely harmless. Well, of course, too much oxygen can kill you. But the masks for like tooth surgery, and they had to like give you a little knockout gas, there's still O2 in it. And they would ask them, oh, don't you think we should take O2 out? And they were like, oh yeah, it's bad.
Oh yeah, I forget which group. They also got a petition for people to ban water, essentially, by calling it by its chemical name and telling people the statistics for the number of deaths due to water. And like, oh, it's in your drinking water, it's in your juices, it's in
I did see that.
Your local municipalities are piping it out straight to your home. You can always fearmonger things like that.
No, here's an analogy I want to make. Like, when Nestle, you know, the CEO of Nestle said that water should not be a, you know, human right, it should be a commodity. He got huge backlash for that. And the reason why is because if you can't afford to buy water, you're going to die. And I think it's analogous with healthcare. Like, if you can't afford basic healthcare and you get sick, you die.
Well, hang on.
We buy water in the United States. We have a water bill for the city water, and we can buy bottled water. It's not free already.
Hang on.
Someone's profiting off of it.
But like, you still have access to a water tap.
I have to pay for it.
Ooh, hang on a minute. I want to sit you down on this. You're conflating something that casually falls from the sky with something that has actual monetary, intangible value.
Yes, but water is becoming less and less common. Like, did you hear what happened in Cape Town? You know, their
What's
water
that?
reserves almost ran out.
Yeah,
Like
that's
water, you know, there's going to be supposedly wars over water in the future.
how many people, or how many charity organizations have sent water over to the country though? Do you know?
No idea.
No, I don't know either. But I guarantee that there are efforts being run in other countries saying we need to get these people water.
Yeah.
Well, we got a question from the chat if you want to tackle this one.
All right.
This is from Dominic. He's pretty cute. Don't eat Tide Pods. Okay. If taxation on something infringes people's freedom to buy or do that thing, then are you arguing that the access to resources to do something is a component to freedom, i.e. positive rights? Who wants to pick it up?
Can you rephrase the question?
Yeah,
again?
I don't quite get
I'm
that.
kind of lost. I'm not too smart, but I can kind of pick up on things. But I need to water it down for me a little bit.
Oh, I got it. Christopher's spoken a few times on positive, negative rights. So if taxation on something infringes someone's ability to buy that thing,
Mm-hmm.
would you argue that the access to the resources that they're taxing is a component to freedom?
I feel like
Yes.
All right, Ben, go.
Well, if you don't have the resources to purchase that item, then I guess that would be.
It's a bit of a sorry. So I mean, like it's a bit of a, for me it's a bit of a butterfly effect. Like if you raise, you know, the tax on it incrementally, it's not going to change anyone's, you know, it's not going to really limit someone's freedom to buy it. You know, they're still going to have access to it if it's only an incremental increase. But in the broad you know, view of society, it's going to have, you know, heaps of it's going to increase the income by trillions of dollars, billions of dollars rather, if it's just like a 10% tax on sugar. I mean, I don't hear anyone complaining about the price of sugar now. And like I'm also going to go further and say that this is the case for salt. What generally happens is that there is some poor person in some third world country, you know, running a salt farm, and he sells it to a shipping company. And the shipping company pays him very little, and the shipping company, you know, takes all of the profits and sells it to us at, you know, quite a low price. And it's like that sort of just wanted to throw that out there, that's actually happening. And you know, these sugar companies are doing phenomenally well. And yeah, I don't think it's, why not tax? I don't see how it infringes on someone's freedom to incrementally increase taxes on unhealthy things. I mean, here's the thing: if marijuana became legal and it was taxed, I don't think there'd be a big movement to, you know, make marijuana untaxed.
It's legal in marijuana country. It's legal in Colorado and it's taxed. There are dispensaries that are taxed for it. And people, I mean, they're probably normies, but they just pay for it. They're just like, hey, I don't have to go to jail for it. I'd gladly pay whatever tax it is.
And I think it was in Colorado that, like, the government, you know, it's actually written into the law that if the government gets so much money from taxing this item, you know, they have to actually put some of that money back into people's wallets. So I think when marijuana became legal in Colorado, I'm not so sure on this, so someone would have to fact check. But, you know, the state of Colorado gave everyone a check of like $100 just due to, you know, they were getting so much tax revenue from marijuana.
I would also say that because of that, so the taxes, if it's a major surplus, it also goes back to the capital of the dispensary. So whatever farm or not brewery, but the growth site of the marijuana makes a lot of that money so that they can buy more land to plant more marijuana or research for it.
Yeah.
We're like, hey, what kind of strands can we make with all this new money that we've made? Can we make something even better? And then just make a little bit higher price. People don't have to pay. People don't have to buy it. They've already got the regular marijuana that they're used to.
I mean,
the adventurous people that buy the higher quality, I guess.
the danker weed. Well, here's the thing. Like, this whole discussion that we've kind of gone into is like, what role should the government play in ensuring people's health and safety?
Right.
Like, I mean, I've heard and seen some stories about the pharmaceutical industry in America, and I think like a third of American children are on Adderall, and the average American adult takes something like 3 or 4 pills daily.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure where I read that, so it might not be true. But in any case, people are taking more drugs than they need to in the United States. Yeah. And here's the thing: people in New Zealand, no one's fucking. We don't have a pharmaceutical lobby here, and people are just taking really basic supplements like, iron tablets or fish oil, and like I think people are confused. Like, oh, I can just take this pill and then I'll be healthier. Whereas like if you just change your diet and exercise more, like I think people, we have to have some sort of way so that a third of American children aren't on Adderall. Like, I don't think we can rely on the free market for that.
That's bad parenting. I don't want to take the time to invest in my children. I want to give them a pill and hope that makes them better.
A third, yeah, but I wouldn't say that the parents in America care about their children less than the parents in New Zealand. Like, it's
greatly underestimating America, my friends.
Yeah, there's some garbage people in the country. And
I would say it's a cultural issue.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. It's also cultural.
So, like, are we going to keep going down this road? Like, would you step in at all to change the culture?
I don't trust the government to be able to solve that problem. I trust the culture to solve that problem. Someone like Jordan B. Peterson to help with that sort of thing.
Well, yeah.
You mean that sexist, homophobic, misogynistic, transphobic?
That's amazing what he can do.
Well, with how do you make changes then? How do you make changes to the government?
Well,
or not the government, the culture. Excuse me.
Well, clean your damn room. And also, like I said, just hike up taxes a little bit.
I think that's a good question.
By limiting Ben, I think by limiting the amount of reliability people have on the government. It's a lot of people's first reaction in the States to, oh, there's a problem, it's the government's solution. There's a problem, the government's job to solve it. If we're more culturally aware, if we cared more about our neighbor, and we're more interested in solving these problems.
So at what point is it appropriate for the government to step in, do you think?
Can I preface it with something real quick? Kris, you brought up a really good point in that it's definitely a culture thing. Now, when I refer to culture, I mean that in the size of the United States might be one of the factors of this issue. Because how many European countries can you fit into Texas?
Right. But you don't have to care about the entire country. If people will just focus on their own street or their own neighborhoods, that would be a start.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We're so fragmented. As much as I love the internet, I think that's making it even worse.
Mm-hmm. But hey, I did want to. I wrote this down and I almost forgot. I want to back up to Cape Town, Sam. Whenever you brought it up, so the limited access to water, is that limited access is it taxed water or it's just? Well, this is more of a question for the chat. If you can find out for us. So, Dan, if you don't mind, kind of hawk hunting over the chat.
You want to know what's going on in South Africa?
I mean, I've already got a news article. Yes, it's 100 days.
Let me make a phone call.
Cape Town will run out of water in 100 days.
Let me ask the chat, guys. What's up with Cape Town?
Well, no, I mean, is the water being taxed? Is it being taxed limited, or is it just being limited access, but it's free to access?
From what I heard about Cape Town, South Africa's water problem right now, there is the argument, and I believe we have a South African member of the group on Facebook, that was making the argument that they started kind of an affirmative action hiring, where they either fired or these older people retired that were very competent in the water system, and there's been some mismanagement as part of it. Not the whole thing, but that was one part of it. The other one is probably natural, as it is in Africa. So they might be given to drought. But that one is just a guess. But I did hear the other one.
Okay, but the question I'm really digging for is, while the water is limited access, are people in South Africa still paying to get that water, or is it just free water, but you have a specific amount for free? Like I've seen on Philip DeFranco, he says like, oh, like each person gets like 24 gallons a day, and that's it, or something, some small little gallon number like that, and that's all they get for the day. And then, but I'm not sure if that's monetary or not, like if they pay for it, or if it's just limited access but free.
Well, I guess we can put a flag in it and come back.
Yeah, but yeah, we can go ahead and move forward with the Chris. What did you say? That the culture.
Can I just say one final thing on the water thing, and I'll be quick?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
So, like, if you have to ration water, water's running low. People can only get certain amount because it's limited. You know, and someone comes along and says, "Hey, I want to have the right to buy more water." You know, that's kind of like the same thing with healthcare. Like, there's a limited amount of healthcare, and you know, there will be enough for everyone to have some sort of basic universal standard of care. And you know, it's kind of like that analogy for me.
Well, so, if it was a hybridized water system, if there was a public and private water system, then someone could and should be able to pay for more. But if it's a universal water system, then no.
Well, I'm reading now here, just to go back to Jacob's question here about what's going on. They had the worst drought in South Africa in more than a century, and that was a big reason for it. And the metro area's population is getting way too large, so it's sort of like the rat universe experiment, if you're aware of that. So that's part of it too. Now, as far as what happens with water, I don't know, but the government is telling people to take showers for no more than 90 seconds. There aren't laws on the books, but they're conserving a lot of water right now. And it looks like the government is saying by April 12th, they'll be out of tap water. So that's tap water.
So I understand. Again, I understand that, but are they paying for it?
Well, they'll be paying for it with thirst, I think. But I'd have to check what they do. If it's tap water, then it has to be from wells. I'd have to look into it more. That's just.
Well, we have an example in the United States. I forget the name of the city. I think it was in Missouri, though, where Flint. They're getting brown water out of the tap from the from the city, and they were still having to pay their water bill.
So here's an idea. I heard that a lot of American doctors are underpaid, and so they move to Australia, where doctors are paid a bit more. If that's the case, and doctors, you say, well, I've got a better chance in Australia, I'm going to go there. If you've got a limited amount of doctors, would you be opposed to the idea of government paying, doctors' salary, or increasing it? Because the free market can't accommodate.
I have to mull over that. Because then that kind of opens the door for the government telling the doctors what they can and can't treat, because they're paying for it. Like, oh, we'll give you this money, but you're not allowed to treat this sort of patient.
Sam, I don't see way towards the beginning about why are the CEOs of these insurance companies making all this money? Do you see a problem as well with doctors making all this money off of the treatment of sick people?
How about that? Gotcha.
Well, hold on a second. Say if we have a limited amount of firemen, and we need to, put money into firefighters, so that more people want to be firefighters. you know, would you say that these firefighters are benefiting off people's houses burning down?
No, I think
I wouldn't say so.
I would say that there would be less fires because they would be more careful. Like the social consequence of that would be, oh well, now I don't want my house to burn down even more because there's not that many firefighters now. Even if you're a spiteful piece of shit, you're not just gonna burn your house down because there's no one that's gonna fix it for you.
Like, I disagree with that because no one wants to burn their house down. And for example, like if your car was 50% less safe, like say if you were driving a car from
on half of the car.
If you were driving a car from the 70s that was, you know, it didn't have the same safety standards now.
Okay.
Would you drive, you know, under the minimum speed? Like, would you drive, you know, 90 kilometers an hour instead of 100 kilometers an hour? No, you'd probably still drive the same way you would.
Yeah. So what's the point? What's the point of that?
Yeah.
What's the point of that question? Because I mean, we can agree to that as long as you're keeping yourself safe, that you're not really punishing anybody else, or that you're at least not at risk.
Yeah, the point of that is that no one wants to get sick, and so I don't think doctors will be, you know, making all this money off of patients.
Oh, okay. So no, so you're reacting to the spiteful comment, to the spiteful person. I mean, there is a certain point at which self-destruction hits a limit, and that the social consequence of that is that people will be forced to help you against your own will.
Sometimes we do have to help people against their own will.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's why we have mental asylums.
Yes. And I wouldn't say it's against their own will necessarily. It's to benefit themselves as well as society overall.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, but who gets to determine that you're mad?
Oh well, I'm under the same umbrella with you, dude. I mean,
yeah.
Well, the psychologist, Jordan Peterson, he tells you that you've gone mad and you need to take responsibility for your own actions. I mean,
Bucko.
Bucko. I mean, I'm pretty sure we can all agree that we're all under the same umbrella. Under that assumption, correct?
Yeah. Well, but no. Well,
I
not
think in
quite.
the case of the crazy person, they don't know. They've lost their sort of free will.
I wouldn't say
but
that
for
they've
somebody
lost.
driving a car, I think that's a different. I think it's a completely different scenarios.
Well, did you guys see that video of that old lady who was left in a wheelchair on the side of the road outside a hospital? Any of you guys see that?
Keep going. I need more.
Yeah,
okay, so this lady didn't have health insurance, and you know it's illegal for a hospital to turn someone away if they're in a critical condition. So she got to the hospital. She was in a critical condition, and they stabilized her. And then as soon as she was stabilized, since she didn't have health insurance, they basically just wheeled her out onto the side of the road. It was freezing weather, and she was just dressed in a gown, and someone walked by and got it on video, and it's a really hard video to watch.
What year and where is this?
Okay,
because I have a counter argument to that scenario.
Go ahead then.
Well, like the thing is that woman shouldn't, you know, the answer isn't for her to adopt responsibility.
No, well, yes.
Okay, so if you go onto Google and type in "woman discharged from hospital left out in cold," you'll find the video that I'm referring to.
Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and make the counter argument to that. If you're hurt and someone calls 911, then the first responders, they have to make sure you live at all costs, and that is their job. Their job is to save your life. So even if you're a spiteful piece of garbage and you try to kill yourself and you blow your brains out, well, not no. Let's say you slit your wrist in the middle of the street and someone sees you and they call 911. Then the first responder's job is to keep you alive, no matter what your status is. Even if you have no money, you could be homeless, and they will still call, and 911 would still be required to save your life by law, or at least try to save your life. So the social consequence of that would be a huge story.
Well, we're talking about this.
Go ahead.
This woman, I just wanted to step in. I hope you don't mind.
Go ahead.
I did a quick Google on this woman's story, and yes, it is verified. This happened in 2018, this past January 11th, in
Really?
Baltimore, Maryland, and Baltimore City Hospital. The University of Maryland Medical Center verified the video and said it would be investigating. They were shocked and disappointed, and this seems less of a product of the healthcare industry and more so of security at the hospital. But more reading can be done.
Okay, because the point of a hospital is not to, okay, you're cool, you're done. No, they keep you alive for as long as possible until either your next of kin or your legal guardian says, well, or by authority of the hospital say, we can no longer keep this person alive, and there's either no one here to take care of them or have them conscious enough to try to respond to anything. So we can only, I mean, it's the end of the road at that point. But the hospital's job is the first responders and hospital's job is to keep you alive, no matter the cost. Monetary value is almost, it's unquantifiable in a sense that it's a life. It's a
how
life.
about it's a life, but how about this?
Okay.
You're very sick, you go to the hospital and they try their very hardest to revive you, and they just unfortunately can't.
Okay.
What if they, would they put that bill onto your next of kin?
Yes.
Because who's going to pay for that doctor's time?
Yes, I mean, someone has to pay for it. Now, if they can't find the next of kin, then it just goes under the radar as an expense of the hospital. I mean, there's no one to foot the bill for this, and then I mean, some of the hospitals can kind of take it like, oh, this happened and there's nothing else. But yes, it would be footed to the next of kin if they came up.
And then actually in the American system, oh, I said actually, give me my fedora. In the American healthcare system, if you do pass away, your bills aren't necessarily given to your next of kin. It's happened within my family as well and stuff. It goes towards the Social Security fund, if I recall correctly.
Really?
Usually when people die, they have a lot of extra left in their Social Security. So at least most of that, they take that. But they also give to the spouse if they leave behind a spouse, so that they still get a Social Security check for the most part. If I recall correctly.
Again, to the chat, I'm not an expert.
Right, neither am I. Now, I was reading a book.
Really interesting.
Because I was reading a book, guys. Isn't that amazing? By Tide. Essentially, it stated one of the biggest costs in healthcare, public or private or hybrid, is end-of-life cost. Essentially, keeping people alive at the end of their life by the will of their family most of the time. Do you think there's any space whatsoever to mitigate the cost of end-of-life care available in any system? How could
definitely.
we? Go ahead.
Yeah, because doctor-assisted euthanasia is illegal. I think people on their last leg should be allowed to make the choice to go out peacefully without incurring all those costs if they wish.
To be fair, they weren't speaking necessarily on euthanasia. They were more speaking on, say, you have an advance directive you write with your doctor. So if you end up in a car accident in a coma, for instance, it would be up to you whether you want to live a certain way or not. It's a pretty lengthy questionnaire. So that's what I meant by that. So with that in mind, what ways do you see that this kind of future directive could be used? Do you think that's an option?
Sure. I don't understand the controversy or why that's a problem.
Do you want me to kind of?
Well, it's something,
yeah,
it's something the culture would put forward. You know, the government would encourage rather than legislate.
Can I try
that something they have now, or you can set up a? I thought you could set up a, hey, don't resuscitate me, or
right, like something like that.
It's something like that, yeah.
I thought that was already a thing.
More in depth.
If more people did it, you'd have less costs. That's what they were arguing.
I suppose so.
It seems like there's a bit of a disconnect between like the private. I just kind of want to tell a bit of a story and see what you guys think of it.
Sure,
like,
go ahead, man.
So there was this girl who visited her her doctor, and she had some checkup or something, and the doctor offered to pierce her ear, and so she said, yes, I'll do that, and it was free, you know, and the doctor thought it was free, and it turned out on her medical bill it was like $1,000 because I can't remember the story quite right, but like these insurance companies are incredibly predatory. Like they would look at the sort of doctor's summary that he wrote when he you know, serviced this girl, and yeah, and like they would look for anything to deny your insurance. And again, people will just end up being debt slaves because if you don't have insurance, you're fucked.
But did the doctor tell the girl it was free?
Yes, and the doctor didn't know.
Well, that's his mistake. He's the one making the claim, and he misled her, whether intentionally or not. That should fall.
Yeah, ethically, it is on him, but not in the, you know, legal documents of the insurance company. And it's just a lengthy it's a lengthy thing. And like I heard that doctors now, like most of what a doctor does is just paperwork, filling out bureaucratic forms to make sure everything's correct so that the insurance company is happy.
Oh, a lot of that's from medical malpractice as well. A lot of over-testing, over-diagnosing and whatnot to mitigate medical malpractice claims.
Yeah, I want to go ahead and ring the cultural differences bell again, because it also comes down again to people not checking their receipts. They don't take responsibility for their own personal accountability. Like the doctor, he didn't know it wasn't free. That's on him. And then it was up to the girl who got her ear pierced that she didn't check her itemized receipt for the insurance bill. They don't pay attention to what directly revolves around them, and they just think that the government's going to take care of it. Oh, if I just do it, it'll just go under the radar or whatever. But it doesn't. And yes, the insurance are predatory because people don't pay attention.
And because there's not good enough competition within the insurance systems. You're kind of stuck with the insurance that your job provides, and that's only within the state that you're in. If we had a much better competition between insurance companies and it wasn't so directly tied to our jobs, you know, because people shouldn't have to waste their time and expend their freedom going over every little bill and make sure that they weren't overcharged for anything. And I think you could have better insurance companies advertise that they're, you know, we've got a team that's going to, you know, make sure that you're not getting overcharged by the hospitals. We're going to make this, you know, quick and easy and painless. And hey, maybe I have to pay another $20 or $50 a month to get that insurance, but I'm going to switch over to that so I can save that on my time. You know, that's something that the market could provide for and could solve if more competition was available between insurances.
So how bad does this predatory behavior have to get until the government needs to intervene?
It shouldn't. It should be up to the people to pay attention to their own thing, because again, the free market decides what happens to itself.
Yeah, but there's also the corruption element. Like drug prices in America are twice what they are in Canada. I mean, like,
they have to go through a lot more.
I suppose we're arguing over the small details. Like, we can all agree that, you know, that should not be the case. Like the government should be able to negotiate with drug companies and lower the price of drugs.
That's
Does Canada have something similar to the FDA? Like, I'd like to know how those compare.
Yeah. That's actually what corporate Democrats said. They said, "Oh, Canada doesn't have as strict, policies when it comes to the safety of drugs." But it's hardly like Canada. Canada's got a problem with people taking shoddy drugs.
So then that I think that would prove towards my point is that drug companies are going to try and provide the best product that they can, and if that's working well in Canada without over stringent FDA regulations, then that's that would be a problem that the United States has, is that these companies have to meet higher standards through the FDA, and then on the negative opposite side of that, you have ability for corruption, ability for falsifying of results and
data,
payouts to get things approved. If we limit that power around the board, that solves the issue on both ends.
Well, we've seen plenty of examples, and Carlos is pointing this out. The very good one here. We've seen a lot of examples of insurance companies ripping people off, as you said. Now, there's also the doctors ripping insurance companies off. So,
yes,
how do you ensure that doctors won't rip the government off?
Why would a doctor rip the government off?
Because they can.
Because the government's going to pay more. They have less market incentive to be
vigilant on their
exactly
spending. Because they're already making so much money from the social health care instituted into the system. How much are doctors paid in New Zealand? It's okay if you don't know, but do you know?
I don't really. Actually, no, I do know. I know. Well, I only know one example. He was a psychiatrist, and he was earning $2,000 a week.
That's shocking.
I got the numbers here. The average.
Is that a lot or not a lot?
Not a lot.
That's not very.
That's not a lot.
It's not a lot. $2,000 a week isn't a lot
for a doctor.
For a doctor? No, it's not.
I was surprised you said that doctors were moving to Australia. They're paid quite well in the United States.
So I got the numbers in New Zealand. If you
go
want.
ahead, man.
The average doctor salary in New Zealand goes by seniority. A resident can expect to earn up to $100,000 a year in a public hospital. A registrar, so the higher above that, can earn at least $145,000 a year. So I guess what Sam was talking about may have been what you say, first year or something like that. They'd be a few years off from residency.
I want to add on that since they're a psychiatrist, they may have been independent or working alone with a very small system of people of their own little group. So it may have been like they only needed to make a certain amount a week from a certain amount of patients or a certain type of patient. So that could also be what that may have been, because psychologists or psychiatrists, either one of the two, I mean, they're not interchangeable, but I mean, Jordan Peterson did clinical interviews with people, and he had to meet with some of them. Some people have to meet 7 days a week for, I mean, if it gets bad enough, I mean, some people will pay $50 an hour just to sit and talk to somebody.
Well, I have numbers for the U.S. if you want to hear them, because you just heard New Zealand.
Yeah.
And I guarantee
average physician income ranges from, in the U.S., $253,000 in the Northeast to
never mind
to $281,000 in the Northwest. Certain regions of the country may have to pay more to attract doctors. Physician salaries reflect the competition more than the cost of living.
Was this U.S. dollars for both statistics, or is that New Zealand dollars for New Zealand?
Yeah, it's American dollars for New Zealand as well.
Okay.
Okay, cool. So good representation. Okay. And, I mean...
Now, is it possible to maybe... is it possible to cut back on doctor salaries, really?
No.
I mean, that's a huge cost.
No.
So
doctors
you brought up earlier... You brought up earlier the
doctors
physician...
Doctors deserve to get rich off of sick people.
Well, wait, was that a meme, or are you like what kind of...
Nah, I was being sarcastic.
Oh, okay.
But,
that was a nice bait, mate. Nice
Okay,
base.
So-
yeah, you got. I bit. You got me.
I can kind of I have sympathy for the idea. Like I'm an adult. I don't want to pay for medical care if I don't want to. I just want to, do it by myself. I mean, can we all agree that like if you're under 18 and you're a child, would you say you have a right to have regular doctor visits?
No.
No.
Wow.
I think that these systems should be efficient and inexpensive enough, and people should be able to earn enough money in the system that it's not difficult for them to have that choice.
Yeah, but like there are some really horrendous parents out there that just don't care if they send, they just assume that their child is healthy. Why not have mandatory children doctor visits?
Well, there's child protective services in the United States.
Yeah, and you know
If-
what? That also kind of crosses the water into mandatory vaccinations or not. But I don't think we should get into that just yet.
That's a great topic.
Yeah, it is a great topic.
Let's save that one. Let's put a flag in that one. Dan, go ahead and cap that one. I want to go ahead and move into the. I actually have some questions for the hybrid side. So, do you want me to ask both questions, or would you like one question? They're
One.
fairly similar.
One
fairly
time.
Similar. Okay. So the first one is, what is your idea of a social safety net, and how would you construct deterrence for those who would try to abuse it?
So sort of like an unemployment benefit?
Yes, let's go with that, because it's a social safety net. It can be defined as however you choose to define it.
So how I would describe a social safety net is something. It's a service that the government provides that helps you get back on your feet. Like
Okay.
you've fallen on hard times and you got no one to
Let's go with that. Bit.
push you back up.
Let's stick. to
Yeah,
that
I mean,
bit.
I agree with that. I can't
Okay,
really.
so now, how would you construct deterrence for those who would try to abuse it?
I see what you're doing here, but you're making a false analogy because yes, some people are happy to work a limited amount of hours and have the government, pay for the rest of, their check. You only work 10 hours and you have the government pay the rest of your work. I seriously doubt there is a substantial minority of people who are purposely sick and they're scamming off the government.
No. Let's move away.
Like people
from the
choose to be
healthcare
unemployed. No one chooses
Yeah,
to be sick.
let's stick with the healthcare one, like what you said, because I don't want to try to conflate those two arguments. So let's go with the social safety net of those who are unemployed and they work 10 hours a week and they get government funding. How do you construct a deterrent for those who would purposely not work that much just to get the extra money from the government?
Regular, I don't know, occasional drug tests.
What if they
Sort
don't?
of like
what if they don't do that?
a short list, so that if you've been on the social safety net for say 2 years, and I don't know how it works in America, but like in here, like in New Zealand, we've got work and income, which can recommend that will give you a job interview and you have to take it, and if you don't take the job, then they kick you off for like 13 weeks. You kind of have that, so like you kind of force people into work that way.
We kind of have something like that, but it doesn't work as well as we want it to.
We have some comments in the chat if you want to hear them.
Sure, go ahead.
Shoot.
Sure, from another one from Poofy Kitty Pants.
Oh, our favorite.
To be fair, there is a floor that if your household falls below a certain poverty line, your health care is provided through Medicaid. That's a fair point. Medicaid does exist, takes care of the people below the poverty line and probably above it too. Another comment from Vaping moderation. Prevention should be the name of the game. People should own their choices, but an objective checkup will inform them.
Yes.
Let's get through one
Ooh,
more.
Say that one more time. I want to make sure that I heard that right.
Prevention should be the name of the game. People should own their choices, but an objective checkup will inform them. I'm sure they mean objective as in just an occasional checkup.
Yeah. Okay, I got it.
Now, the last one.
That's a good idea. I like that.
The last one I'll read out is here. Created from Dominic, asked a question earlier. Creating a system by which not working will never increase income, and working results in a disproportionate decrease in benefit, meaning that having a job will always increase income. It's a fair point.
Yeah.
I like the idea that's been floated about not just giving people, food stamps or something, or some kind of tradable currency, but rather just giving them the actual items themselves.
Pseudo currency, if you will.
Well, I have a question myself here, actually.
Yeah.
Is there any, and this one's more for Jacob and Christopher, or you know what? I haven't heard from Ben in a while, so I think I'm going to pick on Ben.
All right. I actually had a question to pick on Ben too, but you go ahead and pull in first.
Sure.
Dog pile,
Bloodsport.
Yeah, Bloodsport.
Brought to you by Todd. Now, Ben, is there any point in which you feel the state or the government has can be allowed to ration health care?
Ooh, that's a good one. I guess if there is a limited amount of resources available.
Right,
like, say you have so many of, I don't know, saline.
Say what?
Can you say that again? You went robot.
Like, say if you have so much amount of saline available for whatever reason.
You mean saline?
Yeah, saline.
Okay.
But that's the only case I can think of where that would be appropriate, where you have a finite available resources.
Jay, you want to pick that up?
Well, my only response to that really would be, what about the collapse of the dollar? Or not to say that it's inevitable, but
it is.
Well, I really don't think that's true.
Well, because that's another debate. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. I just vipered that a bit.
We're really pushing the envelope here. But yeah, say the dollar collapses for some unknown reason, like our government it dies off for some reason, like in Washington, a disease goes around and makes them all brain dead, and the dollar collapses because of it. What happens to that healthcare? Who runs it at that point? Because the baseline for the basically the poverty line that you've provided for no longer has that affordable or free healthcare that you've given access to. Plus, the people who have been paying into it, they just lost whatever high amount of. They just spent all that time only to get 70% of their work, or 60% of their work, or whatever we choose the system to be.
Chris, is there any same question there? Rationing. Is there any times where the government can be?
I think that's the situation we'd face in a completely universal healthcare. If it was a single payer, completely public, government funded, that due to people not being nearly as motivated to take care of themselves, if they're not going to have to personally fit the bill for their own health and their own treatment, I think things would eventually grow out of hand to a point where the cost of taking care of everyone in the country gets so high, and then the way that would be mitigated would be, the government would then start regulating what we can do with our lives as far as risks we can take, foods that we can eat. I think that's how they would, because people are going to demand not to lose their health care. So then we would have sugar bans, and we would have higher regulations on the safety of vehicles, bicycle, anything along those lines that the government can use to try to force people to be responsible, since they've taken away that responsibility from them.
We have a question up here, actually, but first I want to get to Sam's thoughts on rationing healthcare. What do you think, Sam?
Well, yeah, it's all a matter of how you prioritize it. Like, if you've got an urgent surgery that needs to happen, I think, no matter how big your wallet is, they should give it to you. And I think I can kind of understand, like, if you're at an emergency room and someone pushes in front of the queue because, say, for example, they were drink driving and they fucked themselves up by their own choice. Like, you could say, well, that person chose to be in that position, so why should they go in front of me? But, like, at the end of the day, like, I don't think people really have free will over the choices they make. And I think that, like, we can talk about the choices people make, like people choose to be unhealthy. No one makes an active choice to be unhealthy. I think people get, due to bad parenting, due to, anxiety, people make poor choices in their diet. And it's like, if you choose to eat lots of bread and Coca-Cola and noodles and shit, you're going to feel terrible. And you're going to want to have some sort of sweet thing to make your brain more stimulated, so you have short-term happiness. Just like the government regulates, drugs such as methamphetamine, I think that the government should also regulate sugar in that respect. So back to, like, rationing. Yeah, I mean, like, if you're like, you've got a minor problem, like, say your wrist is fucked up, but it's impeding in your day-to-day life, like, it's getting in the way of your work. I wouldn't be opposed to a system where, like, they have to wait a couple of months so that they can have that medical attention to fix that problem. Alternatively, they could just pay to have that problem fixed now. And I think we can't, like, next to, like, the fact that America pays twice as much for drugs is the biggest problem. And, whether or not we have private insurance companies or a hybridized system, if that problem was fixed, then at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter, because every other country in the developed world can guarantee healthcare, except for America. And America is the richest nation in the world. So, yeah, that's my thoughts on that.
Okay, Dan, I want to do one thing. I kind of want to bully Sam real quick. So I have to structure this properly, or else it will fall flat, and I won't get any, and no one will get what I'm saying. So
it's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, on myself, really. So, okay, so whenever you say no one will deliberately make themselves unhealthy, although anecdotal evidence is not true evidence, you can ask Boogie2988. He was depressed, and he constantly tried to eat himself to death. He said it multiple times on Twitter and on his in a couple podcasts that he's been in. Now,
so you're saying he chose that?
Well, let him finish his point.
Yeah. Sorry. So yeah, you got it. So you got it. You got the point. So now we walk into the realm of psychological disorder. He had depression, anxiety. He was suicidal. But now that you have this hypothetical creation of the government making sure that everyone is taken care of, the government then defines what makes you mentally unstable or psychologically disturbed. So now you've given the government power to operationally define someone's mental state and how they should take care of them, when that should be up to the family, if not the individual.
I think it should be up to I think the government should have a criteria as to what constitutes someone to be mentally ill, and that criteria should be
psychologists. I have to.
Yeah, it should be up to the consensus of the mental health experts.
I'd like to bring a chat into this real quick because this is a nice little statement made by, I think I'll pronounce it Mito. I'm not sure if that's how it's pronounced, but I don't care. You will never eliminate irresponsible idiots. The distribution of human competence in a bell curve ensures a set percentage of useless people.
Yep. Like Jordan Peterson says, there are some people who are, there's no good for them. They're just not good. They're just useless people. There are useless people in the world.
Why haven't you done this entire debate in Jordan Peterson's voice? Is what I want to know.
Because
we actually are planning a debate where he's in Jordan.
Don't give away.
But hold on. I want to go back to that example you brought up of Boogie 2988.
Yes.
Am I correct? Just so I don't mistake you. Did you say that Boogie chose to eat himself to death, and that was a choice he made?
He tried.
But well, if you watch his Draw My Life, you can see that due to bad parenting and depression, he ate, he got morbidly obese from quite an early age.
Mm-hmm. Because of the household and the environment that he was in.
Well, here's the thing though. Like, say if you're a teacher and you start to see, over like a 4-year period, or say if you're a school principal, better example, and you notice that one kid is getting fatter and fatter and fatter, and they're getting to the stage where they're borderline obese, sort of like, you start to see a child who's becoming Boogie.
We've got
and that principal goes to social services, and they send a social worker over to the house to check up on the child.
That would be CPS, yes.
I mean, is that government tyranny?
No, because
I don't like the idea.
It is at the risk of a child's health. So I wouldn't disagree to that, because it is a government facility put in place to protect children, even against their own parents.
Kris, you had a point you wanted to say?
I'm just uncomfortable with the idea of government stepping in to tell people how to raise their children. I think.
Well, when it comes to
society, I think that's something the principle. Again, this comes back to our communities and not being as tight-knit as we should be. I would like to see a system where that principle could go to the parents and try to, without having to use force, without having to use government, explain their concern. And, obviously it's something that would not go over well in our, current year. But I don't think it should be like that. They didn't have to have that. That wasn't an issue in the past.
All right, let's let Ben step in here.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
When the child's in the situation like that, I think that needs to happen. I mean,
here, Kris, I got something for you. I'll let you think it over, Ben. So, Kris, here's a little bit of an analogy, or not necessarily. Because this actually happens. Let's say that there's 3 groups of families. Two each have both parents, and each are a 10-year-old boy, and they go to school. Now, every day when the first kid comes home, they stuff him full of food. They tie him to a chair and they stuff him full of food. And then he goes back to school. And that happens every day for a year. Now, let's go to the second child. The second child has a family who yells at each other, and they're constantly almost at war to each other. The father's abusive, the mother is an alcoholic, and to escape it, the child eats a lot. He eats a lot. Essentially, the same as the parents stuffing the first child. Now, let's go to the third child. The third child is beaten by his father, and the mother is also an alcoholic. So now, there are bruises on the kid, and the first 2 are fat. And it's been happening incrementally throughout the year. Now, when a principal steps in, it is actually required by law that if there are bruises on a child, CPS must be called to at least investigate. This also has to do with obesity. So where do you draw the line in how people not raise their children but treat their children? Now it
Sorry,
is a
was
little.
I guess
It is a little
go
to
ahead.
the extreme. It is a little to the extreme, but no, it's for Chris. But Sam, if you have something to add, by all means.
I'll
No,
just
go ahead,
add
Sam.
that, like, I think there might be a biological reason for this, but like if we see, I think historically a fat person in society has been seen as healthy because they've had access to food, and that's
Yeah,
sort of made us
That's
look
a
at.
cultural thing.
Okay, yes, but here's the thing: like if there was a child who was withering away and got thinner and thinner and thinner, you could send us. What does that change anything?
We can make that the fourth child. Let's go ahead and add that one.
Mm.
The fourth family is below the poverty line and has no access to food, or at least very little access to food.
Can I change this? They're not. They're not
Malnourished.
I mean, it's not that they don't have access to enough food. It's just their parents are feeding them Dorito or Mountain Dew and Doritos because they want them to be professional Counter-Strike player.
Okay, but that would be that would include obesity. I mean, you might have other health problems, but it would mostly contribute to obesity and excess fat on the child, more so than regular malnutrition.
Mm.
Well, I have a bit of an answer.
Go ahead, Chris.
This to me parallels very well with the gun control debate, and I'm not trying to resurrect that whole thing.
Oh,
and
boy.
I haven't gotten to listen to your discussion on that yet.
And the entire chat is empty.
I think, yes, you can have a government program and system to come in and try to solve and become parents for parents that aren't good parents. You can have government come in and take away guns from people that they believe shouldn't have guns. I don't think you're going to solve... You might be able to solve individual cases, but I think energy and time would be better spent for our society to heal itself. And, what are the situations that are making the parents fattening up their kid? What is the situation that's making the parents yell at each other and be in an unstable environment where the kid is overfeeding himself?
I want to ask you where you're going.
What?
I want to ask you where you're going with this. Like, I want to get a little bit more concrete question here, because you're very vague.
It's a pretty large, vague situation. It's easy to say, government needs to come in and do something about it.
Pull something.
Is it going to? Are we going to solve the problem as a whole, or I think what I'm getting at is we're addressing individual symptoms that we see arise instead of discovering and sorting out the underlying sickness that's causing these sorts of things to spring up.
No, I agree.
I would also agree, and to that, I would. This is going to take us both over the cliff here, Sherlock. But so with that, you say that the government shouldn't be in charge of helping everyone. Which I agree to that. So it's up to the individuals to help themselves. But you say as a nation we should spend more time and energy on helping, like, as a whole. The thing is, it has to start. It has to start small. You can't push an entire mountain. You have to start picking at it individually by each rock and bringing it down. So I think that's where you want to go with your argument. That's where I feel like your argument is going.
Well, it's like
I'm an individualist, but we live in a society. We live around other people, and our actions interact with each other. I think there is a sickness to our modern Western society, and I think that's why a lot of people dislike our system, is because things are falling apart. We can, on a political side, we have these liberalist values that we think are going to solve the political sickness that we see, but we're also going to need some kind of moral baseline and something. And I think some of that's tied together. If government is operating more efficiently, if we in the U.S. can trust our government just as well as you know, you folks in New Zealand, and if we can focus back on if we can figure out what it is that's causing our society to kind of fall apart and collapse, I think that's something that society is going to have to work on. That, yeah, you can always come up with a government solution to come in and try to solve these individual issues and these individual symptoms, but it's going to take us as a society to discover what it is that's causing mass shootings, child abuse, depression, and anxiety. You know, these things that this modern world is plagued with.
Right. It's like Andrew Breitbart said, you know, politics are downstream from culture. Like culture, basically everything's downstream from culture. I mean, how exactly the problem I have is when ideologues always have one answer for everything. Feminism, patriarchy, for instance, and yada, yada. I mean, how could individuals affect change within a culture? And whoever wants to pick that up, take it.
Leading by example, I guess. Recognizing these heroes with great ideas to kind of combat that.
Embody the archetype of the hero.
Yeah.
There you go. I didn't want to say Jordan Peterson again. But
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I think something, you know, at risk of him sounding like a cult leader of sorts, and I think that's what we got to be careful with. But
yeah.
recognizing
look,
people like that have a societal solution rather than a government solution will go farther.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'd like to point out first that what Dr. Peterson says is really no different than what's been said in certain, especially theological scholars. So we'll just leave it at that. Sam, you
I'm a bit of an atheist.
Yeah. I mean, like we're liberalists. We're liberalists. We all adhere to a certain set of principles, and I mean, like the obesity rate is 35% at the moment, or 35% of US adults are obese. Eventually, we have to make an exception for our principles. Like, yes, it would be great if we can be individual, but if the culture of obesity got up to like, 60, 70, 80%, surely we have to have some government intervention.
I disagree. We should never abandon our principles for social trite.
Yeah, I agree. Otherwise, that's a very dangerous slippery slope.
We can easily, as a society, we don't need the government. The government was created by the society, and the government should not destroy society.
Well, I'm gonna step into that one here.
Yep.
Essentially, all individuals. I defend the role of the state myself. This is just me talking. I defend the role of the state because without the monopoly of force, you would end up with that force being in many, many different hands. It's like Hobbes said in Leviathan, you only chain individuals up as long as you chain them equally in the same manner, then you can ensure that each individual has at least a baseline of liberty.
Yeah.
But there are so many different things a government can do to curb obesity. Like, it doesn't have to seem tyrannical. Like, say if you weigh over 150 kilograms. I don't know how much that is in pounds. But the thing is, like, you could just make it so that if you weigh over a certain amount, or like if you've got a fat percentage over a certain amount, healthy food is just cheaper. Somewhat cheaper. And, just a minor change like that could have, giant outcomes in the future. Like, it's a tricky question. Yeah. Like, yeah. Anyway, hey guys, I might have to sign off here because it's getting a bit late.
Yeah, we're going up. Yeah, we're going up half the hour. So
cool.
If you want to do a quick closing statement, we can start with you, Sam.
Well, I would just like to say that thank you very much for having me on. It's been an honor. And I would say that also, people like to say USA is number 1. Well, it's actually number 37 in healthcare.
Yeah, but number 1 in free speech. So.
Ooh, got him, coach.
Ooh. Free speech? Well, I think Antarctica would have better free speech than you.
Boy, you better sit down.
Or like Northern Alberta or some shit like that. You can scream faggot, dick, cunt at the top of your lungs, and no one.
Hey, you're gonna piss off the penguins, man.
All right, can we get a blood sport insult towards someone? It doesn't have to be too mean, but Sam, go insult someone. It's blood
You
sports.
fuck Chris. Just fuck Chris for some
Whoa.
reason.
Kris, would you like to make a closing statement and a rebuttal blood sport comment?
Certainly. Yeah, as well. This was great. I hope to come back and discuss another topic. I guess similar to what I opened. I think it's great that within our principles that we're not just some echo chamber following a stringent ideology. We're able to have discussions like this. That's fantastic. Back to the
Blood sport.
Oh, blood sport. Yeah. I don't even know where New Zealand is, Sam. So take that.
Oh,
Yeah, we're off your nuclear radar.
Oh.
Jacob, would you like to make a closing statement as Dr. Jordan Peterson with a blood sport insult?
No. Oh, damn. No, let Ben go, because I want that. Yeah, you got. Damn it, you gotta spoil the surprise, man. Come on.
You'll go last. Ben.
Yeah, go ahead, Ben.
Well, I just, it just amazes me how when it comes to topics like this, we're not yelling at each other. I mean, so often is it the case where, we're talking past each other instead of at each other. So, I just want to extend a hand of gratitude that we're not yelling at each other.
You're here.
Insult. We need an insult.
Oh, poopy head.
Yeah. Blood sport. All right, Jacob.
Well, I'd like to say thank you for having me. And if you don't embody the archetype of the trap, you won't be gay. And Sam, I really have to say, if you're going to use a Minecraft icon, then I really think you don't deserve an opinion.
Oh, ouch.
Oh.
Blood sport. He's going to need a Tide Pod. All right, well, thank you guys.
And to quote, to do a final quote with the good old boy Tom Sweeney, check him out. Your subscription to life should be revoked.
Oh.
Hey.
So, yeah,
Also, Sargon, if you don't ever get on our streams, you're dead. You are dead king to us.
Now to our moderator has to have a blood sport comment.
Oh, of course. Free speech for all, except for him.
well, Carlos wants a shout out, so I'll just say, you're too brown for free speech. So there you go. There's your blood
But what
sport.
defines brownness?
So I'd like to say on behalf of the Liberalist Facebook Nazi Mod Hug Superstar team, thank you so much for listening. My name is Dan Werner. Carlos, thank you for all the comments. Fluffy Kitty Pants, whatever you are, I love that name. Please comment more. Again, thank you so much for listening, and good night.
See you guys later.
Peace.
See ya.